Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at the Listening Post. This week, the Nobel Peace Prize and the fighting talk that followed.
You know why I think he got it? I think for trashing America.
Is Richard Goldstone a legitimate human rights investigator or a self-loathing Jew? Depends on which media outlet you believe. The White House takes off the gloves in its ongoing battle with Fox News.
The communications arm of the Republican Party.
And Frosty, the head-banging bird. It was one of those news stories that had jaws dropping around the world. The announcement from Norway that U.S. President Barack Obama had won the Nobel Peace Prize. It even took Obama by surprise. He said he didn't see it coming and probably didn't really deserve it. There were 205 nominees for the prize this year, and media coverage of Obama's win has ranged from bemused congratulations to outrage. In America, the story became another bone in the dogfight between liberal and conservative media. And the global news coverage of this story has reflected Obama's and America's complex and changing relationship with countries around the world. Our starting point this week is a story that was datelined Oslo, Norway, and spread from there.
Shock and awe at the Nobel Peace Prize.
President Barack Obama.
When Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize, most commentators around the world lost it.
When the reporters were covering this, they gasped in shock.
It's a ridiculous decision, I should say.
The journalists did not get it.
Does this prize come too early?
Like giving someone an Oscar in the hope that it would encourage them to make a decent motion picture.
They did not get what the average people in Russia, in Thailand understand, that Obama is the most powerful man speaking peace this time.
I will accept this award as a call to action.
Speaking about peace or making peace happen? That was a point brought up on many media outlets, including Iran's state-run English-language TV channel.
Just hours after he becomes the winner, President Obama, as a Nobel laureate, convened a war council to continue the fight in Afghanistan. That's kind of ironic, isn't it?
I guess here in the United States, or at least at the White House today, it was peace in the morning and war in the afternoon.
In the Palestinian territories where President Obama cannot even get Israel to freeze the building of illegal settlements, let alone give that land back to the Palestinians who own it, the media weren't exactly celebrating.
Of course, it was mentioned, and I can even show you an example of a cartoon in Al Ayyam newspaper from October the 10th. And as you can see, what it says here is this is not the Nobel Prize for Peace, but it's the Nobel Prize for the might be peace. Again, it shows us that we were talking about a prize for something that still should be achieved and not achieved already.
The charismatic American President Barack Obama pens another impressive chapter in a life that already reads like a fairy tale.
There are some places where the American president remains hugely popular. His ancestral home in Africa is one of them.
Obama may have suffered his first defeat in failing to bring the Olympics to America, but has gone on to net the biggest prize of them all, an honor that no doubt seals his place in the annals of history.
I think on balance, the Kenyan press was very celebratory in its response to the news that President Obama had won the Nobel Peace Prize. I think in that sense it expressed and shared some of the joy that was felt by Kenyans across the country on hearing the news. As Kenyans, we've suffered a lot from terrorism, so I think we recognize and appreciate the steps that President Obama is taking to actually reach out to the Muslim world and try and reduce the tensions that have led to the situation we find ourselves in the world today.
The American president just won the Nobel Peace Prize. By any reasonable measure, all Americans should be proud.
The key word there was reasonable. Not all American media had a reasonable approach to this story.
You know why I think he got it? I think for trashing America. I think for calling America arrogant. I think for apologizing for America. I think for saying he'd sit down with a Holocaust denier without preconditions.
One commentator on the right-wing Fox News network, the daughter of former U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney, said the American military should accept the prize on Obama's behalf.
To remind the Nobel Committee that each one of them sleeps soundly at night because the U.S. Armed Forces, because the U.S. military is the greatest peacekeeping force in the world today.
One familiar refrain on the U.S. airwaves was that Obama did not win the Nobel Prize for what he did, even for who he was. Rather, he won for who he wasn't.
In some ways, he wins this award for not being George W. Bush.
Well, I think what this is a reflection of the general dislike for George Bush.
One of the aspects of the award that the media really underplayed was the relief that the world experienced simply because George Bush and his cadre of war makers and belligerent chess beaters no longer occupy the Oval Office. And I think the media was uncomfortable with that aspect of the award because they didn't do their job of warning the American public that the Bush administration was as radical and destructive as the rest of the world, or much of the rest of the world, perceived it to be.
News junkies would not have been surprised by the announcement had they been watching this Norwegian newscast the night before. TV2 predicted that the Nobel would go to Obama.
Og Barack Obama en av de heteste kandidatene til å få den gjeve prisen.
That news report didn't come as the result of a tip-off from the Nobel Committee. The channel didn't need one. The Nobel chairman, Thorbjørn Jagland, had given the Norwegian media plenty of hints on who the prize would go to.
Thorbjørn Jagland told my colleague that he wanted the prize to go to a person that people all over the world could nod to and say that was a good decision. People all over the world? Who could that be? Could that be a peace negotiator in Latin America, or a prince in the Middle East, or a civil rights worker in Kabul? No, all over the world. That means Obama.
This award must be shared with everyone who strives for justice and dignity.
Here's how our Global Village voices see the coverage of Obama's prize.
Any country in the world is proud when their leader can win such an award. However, what bothers me is when I see the rancorous debate all the time between left and right. The media coverage has been very partisan, has been very sharp, either for or against. And I'm thinking that objectivity might be a little bit better.
Some in the media and the Nobel jury highlight Mr. Obama's success at easing global tensions and promoting global dialogue, while many are critical that Obama has prompted very little progress towards peace in the Middle East, among other places.
If you'd like to join our growing list of Global Village voices, you can let us know the old-fashioned way by emailing us at listeningpost@aljazeera.net, but most contributors just go on Facebook and hook up with us through the Listening Post page there. You can also follow us through Twitter. Between Facebook and Twitter, we now have almost 3,000 viewers signed up. We're also open to your story ideas. You can send suggestions for web videos of the week, and we promise to let you know via Facebook and Twitter what stories we're working on and how you can add your voice to the mix. Our News Bites section gets started with a postscript to the story we led with last week. Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi has set up an emergency task force to monitor what is being said about Italy in the global media. But by Italy, he's probably talking about himself. The task force, which for some reason will report to Tourism Minister Michela Vittoria Brambilla, will, quote, monitor all the foreign press, including dailies, periodicals, and TV, and, quoting again, bombard those newsrooms with truthful and positive news, unquote. Berlusconi is in a media war with Italian news outlets that he doesn't own. There aren't many, and with foreign media over their coverage of the sex scandal that recently brought his marriage to an end. He also lost a court battle a few weeks back when a law that Berlusconi said gave him immunity from prosecution was ruled unconstitutional. One of Russia's relatively few remaining independent newspapers is being sued for libel by Yevgeny Zhugashvili, better known as Joseph Stalin's grandson. The paper is Novaya Gazeta, and Zhugashvili wants $225,000 in libel damages over a report in which Novaya Gazeta said that Stalin personally ordered the deaths of Soviet citizens. Zhugashvili told Britain's BBC Radio in Moscow,
"These kind of accusations come from the people who had no connection with a historical issue. So this kind of accusation are a propaganda."
However, one BBC correspondent in Moscow, the appropriately named Rupert Wingfield Hayes, said that the libel case is the latest twist in what many see as a Kremlin-backed campaign to rehabilitate Stalin's reputation. Canada's largest media company, CanWest Global, has filed for bankruptcy protection because of $4 billion worth of debt. CanWest owns the Global Television Network and other specialty broadcasting channels, as well as the National Post newspaper and an array of papers such as the Montreal Gazette and the Calgary Herald that the company took over when it bought Conrad Black's Hollinger holdings for more than $3 billion 9 years ago. Analysts say that the Hollinger deal has come back to haunt the company. Politically, CanWest has always backed the Liberal Party of Canada, and the company's papers were notorious for an editorial policy that virtually banned criticism of Israel and its policies. The Obama White House is showing signs that it's losing patience with the broadcasting bête noire of American liberals, the Fox News network. Obama has tried to be civil with Fox in the past. He has even submitted to interviews with the clearly conservative network. However, his communications director went on CNN recently, signaling a new approach by saying this.
The reality of it is that Fox News often operates almost as either the research arm or the communications arm of the Republican Party.
It's difficult to say what exactly Fox has done recently to ratchet up the White House rhetoric. It might have been when Fox host Glenn Beck called Obama a racist who hates white people, or when Fox actively promoted the anti-Obama 9/12 demonstrations and then inflated the number of people who turned out. The Fox response fell into the category of predictable.
You gotta be kidding me, right? They're more worried about the war on Fox than the actual war in Afghanistan.
No, actually, that's not what she said, just that Fox is a problem. However, Fox is probably pleased that the White House is talking about the network because ratings are up, and that will make the network's owner, Rupert Murdoch of News Corp, a happy man. It was an odd headline this past week on the front page of the UK's Guardian newspaper, gagged from reporting Parliament. The paper said it was also forbidden from telling its readers why it had been silenced or what the story was about. All the Guardian could report legally was that the case involved the London-based law firm Carter Ruck, well known for suing the media on behalf of clients, the corporate kind. The Guardian vowed to fight the gagging order in court when the blogosphere swung into action. The blogs revealed that the corporation behind the injunction was the oil company Trafigura, and the issue before Parliament concerned the company's alleged illegal dumping of toxic waste in Ivory Coast in West Africa. Then came Twitter. There were calls for a demonstration outside the law firm's London offices, and all kinds of documents relating to the case were suddenly available online. Just a few minutes before the Guardian's lawyers were due in court to appeal the injunction, the law firm caved, the injunction was withdrawn, and the story was out. And the Guardian's editor broke the news on Twitter. We're back after the break with a piece on the fallout in Palestine, Israel, and at the United Nations over the UN's investigation into the war on Gaza.